Ah, man, Mo, thank you. I know you're so particular with who you spend your time with. So sharing this with us is just, I'm so grateful for it, man. We got your brother Pankaj Sharma coming up next, man. So I don't know if you'll be able to stick around, but
I will stick around for him
I
for sure.
know that you'll get something from that. So, Mo, thanks again, man, and we'll talk soon.
All right, brother. Good to be here.
All right. So this is going to be absolutely epic. Um, this guy came into my world when things were kind of rough. I didn't know where I was going or how it was going to happen or anything. And he invited me up to his home in Pennsylvania. It's one of the most immaculate places that I've ever been. And he continues to upgrade it. And, you know, a lot of people talk about syndication. I've been talking about joint ventures for a long time. And people say, well, you can't do big deals if you do joint ventures. Well, Pankaj was right in the middle of doing a $50 million deal with just him and his dad when I came into getting to know him. There was 800 units in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and you know he's here with us today. It's a rare treat, and I am absolutely excited to have you here, brother. So I'm going to move out the way. I am going to play this video though, because we spent a whole lot of money on it. So you're about to get this video, and then the next voice you'll hear is Pankaj Sharma.
Good afternoon or pre-noon. We're actually at noon. So good day, everybody. It's good to be here with all of you. I'm glad I got you before lunch, so you still got that energy. You're still awake. You're not coming back all groggy and sleepy. Um, Man, the topic Jerome gave me, and Jerome's just a blessing in my life. The topic Jerome gave me is generational wealth, and I feel like he always gives me this topic. I'm second generation in the multifamily business. I kind of grew up in it. My father, when I was about 10 years old, when my father bought his first property. Sorry about that. I thought it was all. So I was about 10 years old when he bought his first property, and my father, had no experience. He just had an idea, and he had the heart and the grit to go after it. And he worked very hard for many years, and I was just a kid holding the bucket, handing him the tools and like wondering what is this guy doing, like, thinking, growing up thinking my father was nuts, crazy. He was just very different from everybody else's dad. Everybody else's dad was showing up at the baseball games and so on, and having catch and stuff like that. My dad was like working, grinding, what I mean? The stuff that we talk about nowadays, we use the word grinding. My father was always working, always building, always stacking. And now looking back, I'm glad he was building, stacking, and doing his thing rather than coming to the baseball game. Not saying that other fathers shouldn't do that or anything like that, because he gave me the opportunity to spend a lot of time and invest a lot of time with my children growing up, and I was able to really I appreciate Maurice in so many ways, and a lot of things that we have in common is like we're more interested in the quality of life than it is the quantity. We're going for the quantity, and that was always a big thing for me, and still is to this day. Not more, but you know, like living a quality life and investing in the future generations. Because one thing I realized looking at my life and looking at our family is, and looking at generational wealth, right? You don't just pass down. When we look at the word wealth, first of all, wealth, the root of the word wealth is wellness, well-being, wealth, well, to be healthy. And we want to be healthy. Wealth, real true wealth is being healthy in all areas, not just financially. Um, and so I was going to have a meeting with Maurice a couple months ago, and maybe 2, 3 months ago, and I took out a piece of paper prior to the meeting because I wanted to be clear, like, what am I meeting him for? And I took out a piece of paper and I just took a quick inventory of my life, in 6 different areas: spiritual, financial, physical, mental, emotional, social. And I just gave myself a rating of 1 to 10. And so when I got to spiritual, I gave myself a 5. And I was really shocked because that was always my strong suit, I think. When I get to financial, I gave myself a 10. Uh, Physical, mental, and emotional, I was like around a 7. And social, I was like a 5. We're coming out of like being kind of socially shut down in a lot of ways. And a lot has changed just from taking that quick inventory. And so I got back on when the real kicker for me was seeing the 5 on the spiritual level, right? And really, you can use the word, you can translate spiritual. If spiritual is not your thing, you can translate it as principle and values. We didn't just hand down from generation to generation. Statistically, the third generation loses the wealth or loses the money, because at that point they get spoiled and they don't pass down the values. And the values and the spiritual principles are incredibly important to be instilled in generation to generation if you're going to hold on to the money, if you're going to hold on to the wealth. And that's what I really see that has really helped my father. It wasn't just the fact that he had a dream, he had an idea, and he had incredible work ethic. Kind of like Maurice had this incredible work ethic. My father had this incredible work ethic to just go for it. And he learned like plumbing from the Time Life series books and stuff like that. Like he had no knowledge of anything. He had no idea about writing a deal or anything like that. The broker basically took him by the hand and told him at that point you couldn't even get a loan back in those days. The broker said you can get owner financing on this deal, and my father had to come up with $90,000. He didn't even have the $90,000, right? He not beg borrow, but he borrowed the money, and he refinanced his home and stuff like that. He came up with the $90,000. He was able to do this deal in the owner financing. And that property that over 45 years ago, or over 40 years ago, that he bought for less than $500,000, today is over $5 million. So you look at real estate and even coming through this crazy time that we're living in, to come through this craziest time that like a year and a half ago, everybody's talking about, well, I'm not paying my rent. That was like you turn on the TV, they're like free rent and all this stuff, right? And we came through that, right? We didn't just come through that period, but like we did better than we were doing even prior to, as far as like collections and stuff. And to see that, to go through like a scary phase where you're like, yo, if they don't pay the rent, like they might not have to pay the rent, but I still have to pay my mortgage. I still have to pay property taxes. What's one of the biggest expenses for multifamily is property taxes. The government's always going to get their share one way or the other. And there's ways, to be good stewards and to make sure that the government's not getting way more than their share as well. But we're not going to get into that. That's for somebody who's more professional in that field, in that area specifies. So to come through that and to see that, like, the beautiful thing about multifamily, the beautiful thing about real estate is because generation to generation, apartments are not, unless we start living in AirPods or something like that, like apartments are always going to be a necessity. They're always going to be a need, right? Technology is going to change. This phone is not going to be in existence in another 10 years. They'll have something else out, right? But in apartments, the only thing that I see really changes is the bathroom and the kitchen, and maybe the flooring, the type of flooring we're putting down. But other than that, the walls are the walls, and it's a habitation, and people come in and people come out and people do their thing, and so they're not making more real estate, right? Unless you live in Hawaii where the lava is going on and it's like kind of spreading a little bit by little bit, but that's not really, happening in that kind of way. You're not making more real estate, but the population continues to increase, and real estate values over long periods of times, especially in multifamily. You look at the housing industry, like your house is not going to double in value usually in 10 to 15 years, where I've seen apartment values double 10, 15 years almost, so there's a lot of benefits in time and patience with multifamily and generation, like, having something to pass on to your children that they can hold on to. And I tell my kids, I got two sons, right? One's 17 and one's 19, will be 19 on Tuesday. So 17 and 19. So they're grown. One's in high school and one just went into college last year of high school. And they're interested in our business. Unlike me, I always thought the grass was greener on the other side. I tried everything but our business. And then I finally came back to our business when I got older and more practical, because I was a real idealist, and I was really on a search for something for a lot of my life. I didn't realize that kind of like the Acres of Diamonds story, if you know that story, that the Acres of Diamonds, I was sitting on the Acres of Diamonds, but I was looking everywhere else for those diamonds, you know. And today I realize, like, and appreciate the fact that I'm sitting on this acre of diamonds. And I try to insist in I try to get it into my kids, right? The importance of them as the third generation, that the third generation usually is the one that's spoiled, and they're the ones who usually like get into, they lose the values, they lose the principles, and they lose the money. And I almost lost my screen for a minute. Okay, my computer, I'm back. And they lose the money. So if it's the values and the principles that are so important. One thing when I asked Jerome, I said, Jerome, I've been, given this topic of generational wealth, what can I really talk about? I don't want to continue to, beat the same dead horse. He said, talk about the 4 M's. And one of my mentors one day, he told me about the 4 M's. And the 4 M's are the mortal. They're like the 4 stages of consciousness, right? The mortal, the metaphysician, the mystic, and the master. The mortal is like most of the people in life. They're not responsible for anything. They're always in the blame game. They're always, blaming the government, blaming somebody else, but they're not taking responsibility. They're always the victim, and their consciousness is based on victimhood. And so when you blame, you give away your power, right? And when you're the victim, then, you always need somebody else to come save you. And that's the mortal. The metaphysician is the people that they start to learn about things like the principle of the law of attraction, that you can actually, that your thoughts and your beliefs actually help you to create your experience of life. And, that like thoughts attract. The metaphysician is the person who starts to realize that it's done unto you as you believe, that, kind of like the scripture says, pray believing that you have, that you may receive, saying that if you're going to pray for something, get to the state of believing that you already have it so that you may receive it, so that you become one with the energy of it, right? It's done unto you as you believe, that your beliefs are creative, right? And the metaphysician has to go to, at some point, realize that they're not in control. You start to feel like I can control my destiny, I can control my life. But in reality, we're not in control. Yes, we are co-creators, and we can invest ourselves in making a difference in our lives and take responsibility, right? Instead of being the victim and playing the blame game. But the metaphysician, just like the mortal has to give up blame, the metaphysician has to give up control. Because you get to a point where you realize you're not in control. You're not digesting your food. You're not even breathing your breath, really. It's happening for you, and that the fact that there's a flow of life that's happening, and you can kind of like, just like the boat in the ocean, like you can set the sail, but you can't control the wind, right? And so the metaphysician has to give up control in order to go to the next level of being the mystic. And the mystic is like the channel. The mystic is the instrument of the divine, of life, that life is just flowing. It says, look at the lilies of the field. They toil not, yet Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed as one of these, right? I'm going to scripture. I'm not a religious person, but I am a principle person, and I've studied a lot of principle over my lives. And Solomon at one time was known as the richest man in the world, right? And Jesus is saying, like, look at the lilies of the field. They don't toil, but they don't work hard. They don't bust their butt. They're not grinding. But even Solomon is you couldn't even compare Solomon to one of these. They're just in the flow. They're just naturally beautiful. They just have the life force flowing through them. So the mystic, in the same way, is that channel, and just allowing the life force to flow through you, and you're living in the flow. You're not having to micromanage and control every aspect of your life, because it's a burden. It gets too much to carry. So you're living in the flow, and you're living in the let go, to be the mystic. And you're living in the love. You're living in a higher vibrational frequency, and things just happen. Before you even ask, it's already answered. It's already given unto you, right? That's the mystic. And then the final stage is the master. Mastery is like, I wish I had some quotes from the Lao Tzu Tao Te Ching to throw up here, but the master, it's deep, and I'm not the master yet, so I'm still working on it. But the master is, they can create something out of nothing. They're living in that ability to just manifest. And the great thing about being like Maurice talked about being a minimalist, because the more you have, the more you have to take care of. And today, like, even if I don't get more, people talk about units and numbers and always growing their business, stuff like that. Even if I get to a place, I realize, like, And I've always been like this for some odd reason, you know, like where I was never about more and more and more, even though like life continues to grow. You can't stay same. You can't stay stagnant, especially in this industry. You got to invest your money. You got to put back in, and it's a growing industry. But like we've never like chased after it. One of the biggest things that's helped our family, and been the real root of our success, that my father was able to grow from 90,000 over like $300 million, right, in value, in real estate value, and a lot of it's net worth. You know, at least I would say 40 to 50% could be net worth, right? So there's not like a whole lot of debt owed on our properties. So we're constantly building equity, and we're able to pull off of that and refinance and get more if we want to, you know, and go and continue to go after it. And but naturally living in the flow, like the next right deal just shows up, and we don't really have a lot of times when I went looking for the right deal, it would always elude me. But when I'm just like doing my thing and living my life, like the right deal comes because of that energy or something. Because the reputation also of being able to be a strong closer is very important in this industry. Then the brokers know that when you sign your name on that dotted line that you're going to go for broke and you're going to make it work. They love coming to you because they know you're not going to waste their time, and that's really important in this industry. Um, but one of the things my father did many years ago is he built a temple back for the community, and he always wanted like a legacy, Maurice talks about, like something to pass down from generation to generation, and to for our culture, to be passed down from generation to generation as well. And so by him doing that, I think it's really, he said that his business just started growing in leaps and bounds. And so it's like that ability to give back. Recently I was at a meeting where they were raising money for an after school program. So I was the kid that kind of came home, had the key, opened the door, and was kind of left to my own devices. You know what I mean? And so this after school programs, people like they can go, they have tutors there, people can do their homework. And it's like in a community where it's kind of like, lower income. And so I was able to give something. I was able to give 20% of what they wanted, without a second thought of it, but just to give it. And the reality is, when I walked away, I felt bigger. I felt larger, right? Because one thing that I've learned in life, and the principle, and I'm gonna end this with any questions, but when you give, your energy field grows, right? If we just live for yourself, your energy field stays small. And when your energy field grows, you could become a greater space to bring more good into your life. So it's all about the law of giving, and giving back as well is very important. And the spiritual values, and giving to people. So any questions or anything? Appreciate it.
Of course, I have questions, right? And drop them in the chat if you guys have them. But I'm gonna go, right. So, you did the graduation party for Surge and I don't know 500 of your closest friends, and there were so many people who came up and talked about the job that you and Ruby had done with your oldest son. And so, can we talk a little bit about like how, like, a lot of people feel like wealth is a bad thing and it ruins the kids versus like your ability to have a son who's, on scholarship, playing lacrosse and doing all this amazing stuff and being an inspiration not only to like little brother, but cousins and other people who aren't actually related to you guys?
Yeah. So, one of the great things about, being in generational wealth, and having, I was able to give my sons a lot of opportunity to travel, and to experience the world, and to see different cultures, and to see life at different angles, so to speak. And that really expands, I think, their consciousness, their awareness, and just the realization. Because every time you come back to America, if you just see how good you have it, you don't realize if you have nothing to compare it to. So to go to some place and see that there's no electricity, or there's only running water certain times of the day, or something like that, I think that's one of the ways that's really opened their mind. And then also just really, my wife, being from India, and she's very spiritual, and is ingrained a lot of the culture into them. Just to, like you said, you saw the kids walking up to the party and asking the people, how are they doing, making sure that they're okay, and going around. He was like, at that age, 17, 18, I'm not thinking about anybody else or walking around. And so that was a part of our culture, to go and ask them. And my wife told them that, and they followed through. And people, even in our culture, in the Indian community, right? And it was like 100 people, Jerome. I think you're exaggerating with 500. It was about 130 people actually. And but even a large percentage of them were from the Indian community, and a lot of them were really uh, inspired by the children, and how they were you know um, kind of just being host and being gracious host and helping out and that kind of thing, and not just like all on themselves. So
So one of the things that you've talked about at length with me is being yourself and being able to embrace that and encouraging your kids to do that. And so, for the folks out there, a lot of folk, they have kids, or they have young kids, or they're thinking about kids. And so, what type of guidance would you give them on allowing their kids to express themselves while they're at home?
yeah, one of the things that's important is not what you have, it's who you become in the process. And who we become speaks louder than anything that we can teach our kids. Who we become constantly becoming in the process, and who we are. It's like there's an old saying, like, I can't hear you because who you are speaks so loud I can't hear what you're saying. um, so repeat that question again, Jerome. I was going somewhere with that.
The
Being
important.
yourself. Okay, yeah, being yourself. And so, like, the biggest gift I realized, like, all my life growing up Indian in America with not a lot of people, like, always seemed like I was the outsider, I was the different person. So I always felt like I wanted to be somebody else, right? It wasn't until later on in my life, do a lot of self development and work on myself, that I realized, like, there's no better person to be than who I am. And when you realize that, and you come from a place of like, yo, this is who I am, and just no longer had to be that like letting go of the grass on the other side mentality, right? The grass is green on the other side mentality, and just like appreciating the gift that you are, that there's no other you just like you. And it just today I more than anything else, I just appreciate being who I am, and not having to impress nobody, not really caring. Now it's become kind of a cultural thing, but honestly, to get to a point of not really caring what other people think about you is a great freedom. And I think that's kind of also been passed on. Like, do your thing and don't worry about other people. The people are going to always talk, whether you do good, bad, or whatever. People always got something to say. But you can't live for other people. They're not going to pay your bills at the end of the day. And to really have that not give a F attitude about what other people think. And really, what's most important is what I think about myself. What each individual thinks about themselves is way more important than what other people think about you. At night, when you go to bed, you have that pillow talk. What's that pillow saying back to you? You know what I mean? And
I like
real
it.
important stuff.
So I'm going to do a hard left and then another right. And let's talk about your business a little bit. And so I think it was 2 weeks ago, we talked a little bit, and you said, I no longer work in the business, I work on the business. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
there's a very, very distinct difference between working in and on the business. And so, how'd you come to that realization, and what does that mean?
I think that had been happening for a long time, but I just didn't. I just recently received that clarity because my father was always the person that was working in the business, and I always felt a different way of doing it growing up. And I realized the other day I had the clarity, like, you know what? I don't really work in my business. I have people that work in my business. My main job is I monitor the business and I work on my business. And I never, it kind of like, it was like this thing that all of a sudden it just came to the forefront of my awareness that was always there. And I just didn't even know or acknowledge it. And I'm like, wow, like, and for me, it was a point of freedom. It may sound like nothing for somebody, just like kind of cliche talk, but to realize, like, because I always had this feeling of kind of guilt, or feeling like I should be doing this or I should be doing that, like, you know what I mean? And I was kind of like battling, like, I should be working harder doing this. And like, then I realized, like, that's not my role. Because the hard thing, like, having all these different properties and different, people and stuff like that. If I go too much and working in the business, I go too deep down the rabbit hole, I will lose the macrocosmic vision for the business. And so I'm not like a day-to-day person as much as I am the person who has to hold the vision for the company and the organization, and always kind of just tweaking and making sure that we're going in the right direction. I'm like the captain of the ship, so to speak. So I can't like always be there, putting the lines in or whatever goes on in the boat. I don't even know, but you know what I mean? Like, the captain's got to be the captain. He's got to hold the vision, and he's got to monitor everything that's going on across the board. But he can't get locked up in the driving the boat or doing the specific task or issue. It'll take you down. So to have that realization, like, look, I work on the business and I monitor business. That's my basic function. Everybody else working in the business for me, you know, and the people that are working in my business, I'm monitoring them and I'm guiding them into the vision that I want for the business, you know.
Outstanding. And technology is allowing you guys to do that, from the financial reporting to timesheets and all that stuff. So it's pretty amazing. And you've got properties in how many cities spread across, like, how long of a distance?
We're all in Pennsylvania, and my properties are in 4 different counties of Pennsylvania. 4 different, like, you know, we have the Reading area, we have Montgomery County, Lehigh County, Chester County, Berks County, and Harrisburg, whatever, Cumberland County, I think. I'm not sure what county that is even, but
Yeah.
Harrisburg's the capital.
Yeah, that's like
But
2.5
Valley,
hours or something from
Lehigh
where.
Valley and Harrisburg are like the top 10, top 2. In a recent article, somebody told me they're like the top 2 rental markets in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Nicole just bought some property in Lehigh, so she's getting some
Is
really
there?
big rent bumps as
I
well.
guess I come up in Allentown, we'll meet.
Yeah, she lives in New York, believe it or not, and
Oh,
they
okay,
bought
okay.
their first deal there.
Maybe we won't meet unless you're in Allentown, but I come there once every other week. I'm there.
Awesome.
Yes.
So the final thought before we wrap this one up, man, thank you so much for sharing with the group today.
Sure.
Here we go.
There's my 44357. Oh wait, that's not right. Let me just put my number in here if anybody. All right. So free advice, free whatever, but you know, we don't do other people's deals. Just so you know, that money, that number's out there. I'm more than happy to talk and inspire people, but we kind of stick to our own deals. We just like to keep it. You know, my father had his first deal he did with a partner, and it can go sideways. And some people have that karma and they have that thing to do partnerships, and it works well for them. We just don't. We just keep it in the family, so to speak. You know.
Sure. So what's the one takeaway for the folks who are here today? What's the big thing they should grab from Mr. Sharma?
Oh, if you're asking me, I want to know from them, like, what are they taking away? Are you taking anything away? You know, it's what you pass down. It's who you are and the principles and the values that you pass down to the next generation that are just as important as the money you pass down. If you don't pass down the values and the understanding of the principles, the real principles of life, then the next generation, even if you give them money, they're not going to be able to hold it onto it. The Bible says a fool and his money are soon depart. I'm not throwing about a bunch of scriptural verses out here. Like I said, I'm not even a religious person, but those are principles that I've learned and I've studied, and they make sense, and they're ingrained in me. They're a part of who I am, and they're a guiding force in my life, and I try to pass them down to my children.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. Looks like your cousin joined. Or is that your brother?
That's my cousin. He's got the same name.
Okay.
Unless my brother. Okay. Did you get him to speak? Did you get Ajay to speak?
No, I didn't talk to him about it. It was too late.
Know about it then. That's
next go around.
All right. Ajay, what's up, brother, from Canada? Good to see you on here. He's actually done 2 deals himself. He's bought, like, he's a young kid. He bought 2 houses. I think he's on his 3rd house already as a nice. third rental property. So, and he's just going for it in Canada. So at a young age, you know, got an amazing hustle. I wanted him to come and work for me years ago when I first met him. I said, this kid's got something going on. But he's doing his thing in Canada, and I'm even more happier about that than him working for me.
Awesome.
Working with me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and we'll talk sometime next week, man.
All right, brother. Take care. Thank you.
Peace. Ooh. Talk about a good morning. Are we doing okay today? I hope we're doing okay. We're getting ready to switch over to the next link. And so at the top right underneath the web address, you can click on events, and there's something that says Saturday afternoon sessions. It's the top one. We can move over, and my man Billy Kills is coming in hot from Barcelona, Spain. So I promise you don't want to miss this. So if we can just switch over as quickly as possible, I'll see you guys in the other room, and we'll be queuing up Billy here in like less than 2 minutes. It shouldn't take long for folks to move over. See you in a sec.